Welcome to the debate.
Glad to be here.
So imagine humanity has just discovered it is going to be invaded, and not just by anyone, but by a technologically superior alien race. And they are arriving in exactly 400 years.
Right, and conventional defense is it's completely impossible.
Exactly. So in response, the United Nations does something incredibly drastic. They grant absolute, unchecked authority to 4 individuals.
The Wallfacers.
The Wallfacers, right. These 4 people are given a literal blank check to save the world. But there's one major catch. They can never, ever explain their true plans to anyone because the enemy, the Trisolarans, are listening to every single word spoken on Earth.
It is the ultimate pressure cooker. I mean, you are tasked with single-handedly saving the human race. But you have to operate entirely inside the isolation of your own mind. You can't bounce ideas off anyone.
Yeah. And today we are looking at the tragic story of Frederick Tyler, who was one of those original 4 Wallfacers.
A very controversial figure.
Very. Tyler is just fascinating to me. Before the crisis, he was the United States Secretary of Defense. When you picture him, think of a tall, thin man with these severe square glasses.
Very serious-looking guy.
Very. And he was the intellectual architect of modern asymmetrical warfare. He literally wrote the definitive book on the subject, called The Truth of Technology. His core thesis was that technological progress actually empowers small, weaker forces to threaten massive superpowers.
Right.
So when the Trisolarian invasion became public, the UN basically looked at Tyler and thought, hey, this is the guy who knows how the little guy wins.
Yeah, but that specific background is exactly what doomed him.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. The UN hired a 20th century geopolitical strategist to fight a 23rd century cosmic threat. I mean, Tyler looked at a highly advanced interstellar alien fleet and he treated them like a hostile nation state.
Well,
He suffered from severe paradigmatic blindness. His strategy wasn't some brilliant adaptation. It was an inflexible military mind forcing an obsolete worldview onto a universe that operated by completely different rules.
okay, I have to push back on the idea that his worldview was obsolete because we really have to look at the constraints he was operating under.
Sure.
Tyler couldn't just, invent a futuristic sci-fi weapon. The Trisolarians had sent subatomic supercomputers to Earth.
The sophons.
The sophons, yeah, right. Think of the sophons as these invisible saboteurs living inside our particle accelerators. Every time humanity tried to discover the foundational quantum physics we needed to build better tech, the sophons just scrambled the results.
They locked human science in the 20th century.
Exactly. Tyler was effectively told to fight a modern military with sticks and stones. So his strategy of pragmatic maximization, taking the dead-end technology we had and maximizing its asymmetric potential, that was really the only logical path forward. I think his double-cross plan was a masterpiece of ruthless asymmetric strategy.
And I view Tyler's plan as a doomed, convoluted fantasy.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I understand the constraint of the sophon lockdown. I get it. What I challenge is Tyler's initial response to it. His first major initiative, the so-called mosquito swarm, was just absurd on its face.
The space fighters?
Right. He demanded his fellow Wallfacer, Ray Diaz, develop miniaturized 100-megaton hydrogen bombs. Tyler's public plan was to equip 1,000 nimble, single-pilot space fighters with these nukes and run suicide kamikaze missions against the alien fleet.
Yeah.
That isn't pragmatic maximization, it's desperation masquerading as strategy.
Look, when I first read about the mosquito swarm, I had a very similar reaction. Sending single-pilot fighters against a Type 2 civilization sounds like, well, throwing firecrackers at a battleship.
Exactly.
But remember Tyler's book. He knew the massive technological gap meant any conventional engagement would result in a 0% survival rate for humanity's fleet.
Sure, they would be wiped out.
Right. So Tyler was the only leader brave enough to accept that cold mathematical reality. He looked at the board and said, our conventional forces are going to die anyway. How do we weaponize that death? His reliance on the kamikaze spirit wasn't a lack of imagination. It was an attempt to turn inevitable casualties into a tactical asset.
Okay, but then Let's examine his global search for that spirit, because it reveals a profound misreading of human nature.
How so?
Tyler literally travels the world searching for the psychology of self-sacrifice. He visits the Kamikaze Museum in Kagoshima, Japan.
And he stands there in the pouring rain, fixating on a suicide note from a World War II pilot that reads, "Mom, I'm going to be a firefly."
It's a powerful scene.
It is, but then he flies to the mountains of Afghanistan to speak with an old militant leader, looking for that specific, radicalized willingness to die. And he doesn't find it.
He doesn't find it because it no longer existed. The old militant leader in Afghanistan tells Tyler flat out that the hatred he is searching for is a lost treasure.
Right.
Because the arrival of an extraterrestrial threat completely dissolved the old geopolitical and ideological hatreds that used to drive men to suicide missions. Humanity was finally united.
United against the aliens?
Exactly. And instead of recognizing this shift and figuring out how to inspire a unified humanity through hope, or, the preservation of our species, Tyler simply falls into a deep despair. He wanted a military that fought to die. He was intellectually incapable of conceptualizing a military that fought to live.
See, that is a very romantic view of human unity, but I see Tyler's realization entirely differently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Tyler was acting like a master architect assessing his building materials. If you are designing a skyscraper and you test your steel only to find out it is structurally weak, you don't stubbornly build a 100-story tower out of it anyway.
Well, no, of course not.
You change the blueprint. Tyler's journey to Japan and Afghanistan wasn't a failure of leadership. It was a brutally honest, necessary assessment of modern society.
I don't know if I'd call it necessary.
I would. He realized that a civilization accustomed to high social welfare, comfort, and deep individualism simply could not produce the self-sacrificing weapons he needed. He accurately diagnosed a fatal flaw in his own army.
Calling a lack of suicidal ideation a fatal flaw kind of highlights the sickness in his framework, don't you think?
It's pragmatism.
Modern humanity wanting to survive isn't a weakness, it's a biological imperative. Tyler was so wedded to his asymmetric, small force beats big force philosophy that when humanity refused to fit into his 1990s counterterrorism textbook, his disillusionment broke him.
But the disillusionment is what birthed the true brilliance of his plan. Because you are right, the public mosquito swarm was never the real plan.
Right, the Wallfacer rules.
Exactly. Because of the rules, Tyler had to hide his true intentions. When he realized modern humans wouldn't willingly sacrifice themselves, he engineered the ultimate double cross. He pivoted to using the Earth Trisolaris Organization.
The ETO.
The ETO, yeah. The human traders who literally worshipped the aliens.
And this is where the plan crosses from merely obsolete into a total convoluted fantasy.
Hear me out on the mechanics of it, though, because the psychological layering is incredible.
Okay, lay it out.
Tyler's hidden plan was to let the ETO pilot his space fighters. He would arrange a scenario where the ETO attacks Earth's own space fleet, slaughtering human ships to prove their absolute disloyalty to Earth.
Which is insane.
But wait, then the ETO would flee out into deep space to meet the approaching alien fleet. As a Trojan horse to win the aliens' trust, the ETO would bring tens of thousands of tons of clean water mined from the ice of Europa and Ceres. Let's pause on the water, actually, because Tyler places a massive bet on this single element.
He places that bet because it is grounded in Trisolarian biology.
Right.
The aliens evolved in a chaotic star system where they survived extreme conditions by, literally dehydrating their bodies into flat, lifeless husks.
Right, and then rehydrating when conditions improved.
Exactly. Tyler deduced that after traveling through the vacuum of space for 400 years, their onboard water recycling systems would be pushed to the absolute brink. They would desperately need pristine water to rehydrate their colonization force.
So he's using their biology against them.
Yes, Tyler weaponized their most fundamental biological vulnerability. And once the ETO delivered this water, getting the hydrogen bombs right next to the alien ships, Tyler would use a remote drone override to take control of the fighters and detonate the payload. He solved his pilot problem by tricking the traders into doing the kamikaze run for him.
I appreciate you laying out the mechanics there, but the deeper we look at the causality, the more the plan completely falls apart.
How so? It's brilliant.
Let's start with the cost, okay? For this Rube Goldberg machine of a plan to work, Tyler has to allow the ETO to genuinely murder Earth's own space fleet.
Well,
He has to sacrifice human lives and human resources just to sell the deception. It crosses the line from asymmetric warfare into senseless self-destruction. I mean, he is doing the aliens' work for them before a single bomb is detonated.
in a war of total annihilation, sacrifices are unavoidable. You are evaluating his tactics using peacetime sensibilities.
I am evaluating his tactics using basic logic. Let's look at the Trojan horse itself. Tyler trying to trick the Trissolarans with a giant iceberg and hidden nukes is like, it's like a medieval knight trying to poison a modern tank division by leaving out a contaminated bucket of oats.
That's a bit of an exaggeration.
It's really not. The target isn't just immune, they don't even operate on a paradigm where that trap makes sense. Are we supposed to believe a civilization capable of unfolding protons into extra dimensions is going to blindly accept an iceberg without scanning it?
You are missing the psychological constraints of the Trissolarans here.
Am I?
Yes. The source material explicitly establishes that the Trissolarans communicate through direct, transparent thought. They physically cannot lie.
Right, they just broadcast their thoughts.
And consequently, they severely struggle to comprehend deception. Tyler's plan was tailored entirely to exploit this specific cognitive blind spot. The deception isn't technological, it's psychological.
Okay, but
The aliens would see the ETO their most loyal, fanatical followers, bringing them a biological necessity. They wouldn't suspect a trap because the concept of a trap disguised as a gift is completely foreign to their evolutionary biology.
Okay, that cognitive blind spot is relevant in human-to-alien communication, sure. But the climax of Tyler's arc shatters the idea that his plan was viable.
You mean the wall breaker?
Let's talk about the Wallbreaker. The aliens assign human traitors to deduce the hidden plans of the Wallfacers.
Right.
Tyler's Wallbreaker isn't some super spy with advanced alien tech. He is described as this pale, malnourished man in a wrinkled suit and a bowler hat.
Yeah, he looks like a petty bureaucrat.
Exactly. And this completely unassuming man unravels Tyler's grand top-secret mystery simply by noticing Tyler's hyperfixation on water-bearing celestial bodies.
I mean, the wall breaker's deduction was brilliant. I concede that. The way he traced the supply chain of the Europa ice mining operations to figure out the Trojan horse, it was a great piece of detective work.
It was basic accounting. It exposed how fragile the deception was. But the mechanics of the reveal aren't even the most devastating part.
No?
No. After this unassuming man lays out Tyler's entire secret double-cross, Tyler is defeated. He slumps in his chair, effectively caught, and he asks the Wallbreaker, if what you say is true, so what?
Oh, man.
And the Wallbreaker replies with what I consider the most chilling sentence in the entire series. So nothing. Mr. Tyler, regardless of whether or not I've broken your plan, the Lord does not care.
It is a phenomenal moment in the text.
It proves Tyler's entire framework of pragmatic maximization was a delusion. Tyler spent years agonizing over this tactical deception. He compromised his soul, he planned to murder his own fleet, he spiraled into suicidal despair, and it was essentially tossing pebbles at a mountain.
Let's explore why they didn't care, though. It wasn't just arrogance on their part.
No, it was physics. 100 megaton hydrogen bomb sounds terrifying on Earth because our atmosphere turns that energy into a massive shockwave.
Right.
In the vacuum of space, there is no shockwave. It is just a localized flash of radiation and heat.
Which does nothing to them.
Exactly. The Trissolarians build their ships out of materials held together by the strong nuclear force. They have to, so they can survive the impact of interstellar dust while traveling at a fraction of the speed of light. Tyler's bombs wouldn't even scratch the paint on a Trissolaran hull.
Yeah.
The aliens didn't care because the threat was mathematically insignificant. Tyler's tragedy is that his paradigmatic blindness led him to sacrifice his humanity for a plan the enemy literally shrugged at.
I agree. The revelation of the technological gap is devastating. The Lord does not care completely dismantles his strategic worldview.
Completely.
But I argue that what truly destroyed Frederick Tyler What drove him to take his own life by a quiet lake wasn't the aliens' indifference.
Then what was it?
It was the horrific psychological trap of the Wallfacer role itself.
Walk me through your thinking there. How does the Wallfacer system kill him more than the failure of his plan?
Okay, think about the immediate aftermath of the Wallbreakers' visit. Tyler is completely shattered. His plan is functionally useless. His morality is permanently stained by his willingness to slaughter his own fleet. And he has just been told his enemy doesn't even respect him enough to feel threatened.
Right, the disillusionment is absolute.
So he goes out into the public. He walks among ordinary people, and he tries to confess. He wants to be punished. He wants to scream, "I am a monster. I plan to let the ETO attack our own chips."
And he runs face first into the Wallfacer paradox.
Exactly. The public refuses to believe him. They look at him and they offer what the book calls the Wallfacer smile.
Yeah.
Because of the absolute unyielding logic of the Wallfacer project, any seemingly crazy, absurd, or evil thing a Wallfacer does is immediately interpreted by humanity as just another layer of deception.
They think is all part of the plan.
Right. When Tyler desperately tries to confess his sins, the public just nods knowingly, assuming his confession is a brilliant feint to confuse the alien sophons. He is completely, totally isolated. He is locked inside a glass box where his own people worship him for the very sins he is agonizing over.
It is a terrifying psychological paradox. I mean, he becomes a prisoner of humanity's faith in him. He is screaming that he failed, and they're applauding his commitment to the bit.
Right. So I look at that and ask, could any tactical plan, no matter how brilliant or technologically sound, survive the crushing psychological weight of being a Wallfacer?
That's a fair question.
I think Tyler was the first inevitable victim of a fundamentally inhumane system. The Wallfacer mandate demanded that he cut himself off from all human connection, lie to everyone he loved, and shoulder the survival of the species in total silence. It wasn't just the physical scale of the alien fleet that broke him. It was the total alienation from the human race. The weight of that disillusionment is why he ultimately ends his life.
Look, I acknowledge the immense psychological toll of the Wallfacer project. It is an inherently traumatizing mechanism designed to isolate the human mind.
Absolutely.
But I still maintain that Tyler's specific demise was uniquely tied to his worldview. If you look at other characters who endure immense psychological isolation to protect humanity, their internal fortitude is sustained by a vision of the future.
And Tyler didn't have that.
No. Tyler's tragedy was that he was a man holding a Cold War hammer, desperately trying to treat an interstellar invasion like a geopolitical nail. He was obsessed with death, kamikazes, and convoluted betrayal. Because he couldn't elevate his thinking past his own background, his disillusionment was inevitable the moment he realized the universe was bigger than his textbook.
Well, we have reached a deeply compelling point of convergence here. As we evaluate the legacy of Frederick Tyler, I maintain that he was a brilliant pragmatist forced into an impossible corner. He took the lockdown physics he was given and engineered a flawless 20th century trap. He brilliantly identified the intersection of the enemy's biological weakness for water and their cognitive inability to understand deception. And he was ultimately broken only by the incomprehensible scale of the enemy and the suffocating psychological torture of his position.
And I maintain that Tyler's tragedy serves as a dark warning about intellectual rigidity. He was a man whose cynical obsession with human frailty blinded him. By assuming the worst of humanity, that we lack spirits, that we could only be utilized as sacrificial pawns in a complex double cross, he blinded himself to the realities of a cosmic-scale conflict. He effectively destroyed himself from the inside out.
Both of these perspectives highlight why Tyler's arc is so essential to understanding the early crisis era. He was a man crushed by the impossible weight of saving a world he no longer truly understood. His story forces us to look closely at the toll of extreme isolation.
It really asks whether the burden of absolute authority inherently destroys the person wielding it.
Exactly. There are so many more layers to humanity's defense against Trisolaris, and we encourage you to dig into the source material and form your own conclusions.
It leaves you wondering, if you were handed that blank check and the only currency you could spend was the lives of your own people, would you write the check?
Yeah.
And more importantly, would you even know if you were buying the right thing?
That is the ultimate burden of the Wallfacer. Frederick Tyler tried to write that check, only to discover that the Bank of the Universe operated on a currency he couldn't comprehend. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.